Greetings, my friends. Father Leo here, and this is a homily or reflection for the 30th Sunday of Ordinary Time. And of course, today I can't help but remark on the beauty of the day. It is one beautiful day out there, and surely a sign of God's presence and God's beauty. Today's gospel is a good one because it's so human. And we know that Jesus had a very good knack for telling a story. And then when he tells the story and people step back and hear it again or think about it, they realize they just got punched in the gut. He turned everything inside out or upside down. And that's a good part of today's reading. Two men went up to the temple to pray, we're told. And on the one hand, you have the good guy. And when he comes in the temple, he goes right to the front where God can cheer him. And then he starts out by saying, God, I thank you, I'm not like the other people. And then he goes on to list all the faults of other people. Now, the very fact that he was a Pharisee meant he was a leader of the people. And naturally, when he spoke, the people at the time would think, well, whatever he says is worth listening to. Well, Jesus says, wait a minute, just hold on a minute. Yes, he's an important person, and he generally has something worthwhile to say. Hold on a minute here. Then he goes on with the second half of his story. The tax collector. Now, the tax collector they were the marginalized people of the day. Marginalized. They were the other. And there's a lot of the others today. And that's one of the problems of our society. So much judgment of people against others. And others are different because of color, skin, religion, race, you name it. The others. Well, just a minute, Jesus says. I have an idea here. So here you have the tax collector. And he stands afar off. Just standing far off, those words of Jesus show us who he is. That he's a very humble man. His very body proclaims it. And then he said, God, be merciful to me. I'm not doing very well. In other words, he's saying, if we translate it into our language, he's saying, I'm human, God. I'm human. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've done things I shouldn't have done, and I've not done things I ought to have done. He says, I'm human. That's what he's proclaiming. He's being honest and he's being truthful about himself. So on the one hand, you have the Pharisee, self-righteous, filled with pride. You have the other man, very humble, who tells his story with honesty and truth. And then, of course, Jesus drops the bomb on them by saying, one man went home justified. In other words, God said to the man who's humbled himself and said, I didn't do very well this past while. I've made some pretty serious mistakes, but he's honest and open. And Jesus said he goes home justified. In other words, he experiences the love and forgiveness of God. And the sense of the affirmation of God is more than forgiveness. He's affirmed in his intrinsic goodness, his truth, and his honesty. And then he says, those who humble themselves will be blessed, and those who exalt themselves will be humbled. And that's where it's worked out. And I guess we have to really look at our world and to see really, where is that story being played out? And it's really important we don't point our fingers at others. Because I remember when I was a kid, a teacher saying to me, Leo, when you point your finger at somebody, you're pointing 3 fingers at yourself. So that's a warning, part of a teaching. We too are human. And so that's what he's saying here. Now, in my own life, I want to tell you a story. I have been going to visit and get to know the homeless people here in Peterborough. I felt attracted to go and be with them, and first of all formed a committee who would try to provide them with housing and get them in out of the cold and the rain and the snow and the sleet, get them in where they're warm and dry and safe. That's the work of our committee. Now, I also make a point of getting to know the homeless. I'm not going to talk about people I don't know. And so I visit them every morning, once a week. I spend the morning visiting with them. I buy them coffee. Some of them I pay for food. But no, I give them something that there's no price tag on it. I tell them I can only offer you one thing, and that is friendship. I come with friendship to be your friend, that we can have a relationship. And over the months, as that relationship has evolved, I've come to love those men and women. They're not pretty people. A lot of them have a lot of hair. I wish I had some of them, some of that hair. I don't, pretty well lost it. But anyway, beards, teeth missing, haven't had a shower for a bit. But there they are, living in the rough. Now I want to quote a paragraph from Father Richard Rohr. As you know, he puts out a weekly, Leo, get your act together, a daily reflection on the internet. And here's the one he put out last Thursday. We must not separate ourselves from the suffering of the world. When we're close to those in pain, their need evokes love in us. Very few of us have the largesse, the magnanimity to just decide to be loving. Someone has to ask it of us. So he's kind of saying, you're not always automatically capable of loving, of compassion. And he's saying that it takes something to evoke that love from us. Evoke that love. And he says you have to get close to pain. You have to get close to pain. Someone has to ask it of us. And certainly when I meet with my friends down there, my brothers and sisters, when we converse, they tell their stories, I listen. And listening is a big part of it, because I don't have any magic bullet that can solve their problems. No, I don't. But the thing is, I can listen. But more than that, when I started going down to visit them, when I say down, it's down to the center of the city. When I went to visit with them, they were strangers to me. But you know what I found? They were much more spontaneous in welcoming me than a lot of groups I've met who are very successful people. They're much like that Pharisee. They're very good people. But they did that, and it was their pain, because they all have a story. Now they're like the publican in the gospel. They have been judged. People in the city say, thank God I'm not like them. Does that sound familiar to you? Comes right from the gospel, from the lips of Jesus. Thank God I'm not like them. They're drug addicts, alcoholics, they're corrupt, they're criminals, you name it. And they are being judged and have been judged by the so-called good people. The so-called good people. So I'm wondering if you really take that gospel seriously, can we see that as Jesus turned things inside out in his day, that gospel turns things inside out in our day? Because the people who make the judgment are people who, well, they are good people. They could be saying prayers every day, reading the Bible, handing out some money for the poor, doing things like this. But somehow there's a blindness there. They can't see their own faults, especially the fault of judging and seeing people as the other, Now, Julian of Norwich, a mystic, coined the word oneness. Oneness. All are one. All are one. But it still isn't lived out in our world, in our society, right here in town. It's not lived out. A couple of years ago, when many of the homeless people put their tents on a piece of property, Tent City they called it, in the spring they were threatened. And the authority used the police, who are here supposed to be here to protect and serve, but not the homeless. Isn't that weird? It's right there. They're not there to protect and serve the homeless. Oh no, because they're the others. And since they're the others, then the good people can say, send the police down, threaten them, threaten to arrest them or fine them if they don't move. It's using the police, and the police obeying that unjust command to oppress the homeless. Don't you see it living out in our world? I see it here right in our own town. That story is being lived out every day in our town, where the good people are saying, those other people. And once you say those other people, your words betray you. When we use those words, those other people, our very words betray us of our own inner divisiveness. It indicates that we are divided within ourselves. Because if we were at one and within ourselves, we would project that out on the world. But if we're divided against ourselves, we'll project that out on the world. And so, by our words, we reveal ourselves. And all you got to do is listen carefully when people are talking, particularly when they're talking about other groups of people, those other people. And when you do that, you will see. So as I understand that gospel, it tells me that the homeless people, many who have experienced tremendous trauma and hurts and pain and rejection. And so, on the one hand, when the good citizens say to them other people, they should be run out of town, out of sight, they're all bad people. There we have it. That's today's gospel, my friends. In today's gospel. And on the other hand, the other Republican of the gospel, the poor, the marginalized, those who have to use food banks, those who are discriminated against, those who live in the rough, it's all those others. And today's gospel says that every time a citizen or citizens judge the others as less value than they themselves, they're living the gospel. That's it. They're living it. And it really tells me that if that gospel from the lips of Jesus tells me that in many ways the homeless are first with God. The homeless are first with God. The hungry who go to the food banks are first with God. Those who are using illegal drugs are first with God. Those who are mentally ill are first with God. Anybody who comes under that title of the other, they're first with God. They go home justified. They go home justified. And on the other hand, it's pretty scary for the white privilege if they are the ones who are saying them as others. Well, you heard the gospel. You know what Jesus thought about it and what he said about it. Those who humble themselves will be exalted, and those who exalt themselves will be humbled. Sometime, and I don't know how that plays out, that's up to God. That's up to God. Let God figure it out. And in the meantime, I think it's important for us to hear that gospel story. And if we are among those who think we're so good, we need to do some spiritual work in our own growth and transformation. And one of the surest way to do it is to go and spend time with people who are in pain. As Richard Rohr said, go and spend time with people who are in pain and listen. And he says, it will evoke love within us. It will evoke. And someone has to ask it of us. All I can say to you is, the homeless people ask me to love them. And I have found that I've been able to do that. And for that, I thank God. I thank God. Blessings upon you this coming week. Bye-bye.